Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bettinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. The last video I put up was one that was made mostly with designer series paper, and I got some really nice comments on it, and I thought that this time I would do again what we can do with some of the designer series paper. I'm calling these series Fast and Beautiful, where we allow the designer series paper to do an awful lot of the heavy lifting for us. And so let me show you what you need to make this card. I thought this one was particularly nice. It's not overly feminine, and I think you could put a happy birthday on this and get away with this as a masculine card to give someone a spouse or brother, or any guy in your life, and it's just not overly fussy. And so I think, but the result I think is pretty good. I used a very vanilla base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Then I used a Cajun Craze. There's a lot of little bits of Cajun Craze in this one designer series paper. This piece is 4 1/4 by 5 3/8, and that's for the interior. I also need a panel that is a bit smaller for the inside of the card, and I may need to cut that if I don't have one. Maybe that one will work. We'll just trim that one down and make it work. Then I have 3 pieces. These, I put a piece of copper, a piece of the Cajun Craze, and those are both 2 3/4 square. So 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And then this little vanilla piece is 2.5 by 2.5. And what I'm using is some of the papers from the Painted Harvest suite. And so the papers that I'm using are this, which is the same designer series paper. I'm just using the 2 different sides. This piece is cut by 4 by 5 1/4, and this piece ended up, I kept trimming it down, 3 1/4 by 4 5/8 by 3 1/4 is what I ended up doing with this piece. Okay, so let's just get started, and it's actually a pretty easy card, and I decided to use the copper embellishments to dress up the designer series paper. Our designer series paper are often quite beautiful, but there's no reason we can't doll them up a little bit with some metal accents. So I'm going to burnish and my card base here, and I'm going to go ahead. This paper is so wild, it's one of those things that makes your eyes go bleary. So I thought a little bit of it showing went a long way, but I like the brown tones, and the whole notion of this still works for fall. And so I thought it worked out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to my base here, and I'm just going to use snail. And again, when we're using designer series paper to do a lot of the heavy lifting, then we can get a pretty fast card put together. So there's that piece there. The next piece I'm going to work on, I'll set that aside, is this piece. And what I did was I used the Painted Harvest stamp set, this stamp set, and what I'm using is this little second generation stamp for the leaf, and I'm using these 5 little dots. And so what I need to do here, and let me get some scratch paper here. What I'm doing is using my embossing buddy on my piece of DSP, and then using my Versamark here. I'm using, let's see, the 5 little dots, and what I'm going to do is just put those 5 little dots kind of randomly all over this page. Okay, now I've got my copper embossing powder here, and I'm going to see what we get, how close I came to getting copper dots all over my paper. And sure enough, they're starting to show up. And it was kind of an interesting idea to just add a little bit of copper accent to this paper to give it a little step up. You can use the paper and it's beautiful just by itself, but why not get a little bit more out of it? And I see there's a couple spots that really could use a little bit more. So I'm going to add 1 or 2 here, and then I'm going to heat. Okay, so there I've got a little bit of copper embellishment now on this little card piece. And I looked at it and it's very subtle. There's an awful lot of pattern going on. And so I decided on this one, I also just took the edge of my Versamark pad here, and I just swiped it across a couple different places on this page, and then added some more copper embossing powder. I wanted a bigger profile of the copper on here. So let's see what I got. I got a lot. Truth be known, this on the top is more what I was going for, so I'm going to just take a little bit of this off so I get some definition here. Now, a lot of that's going to be behind the panel and won't matter a whit, but somehow it makes me feel better. So, all right. So there we go. It doesn't matter that it's not in any kind of a discernible pattern. It only matters that it covers the area that you'd like to see it cover. And I think that's plenty. So I'm going to heat set this as well. Okay. While I'm embossing, I think I'll go ahead and stamp my pieces and my sentiment on this piece here. So here I used Just For You, and I think this comes out of Rose Wonder. I'll verify that. And I put that down here at the bottom. And then I used my leaf stamp from that Painted Harvest stamp set. And let me ink that up. And I wanted to get some leaves that were just kind of overhanging here. So let me put one off to the side and up here. And maybe one here at the top. I just think that touches of copper kind of pull this card together. There we go. All right, now I'm going to put some embossing powder on this and heat set this and see how we do here. going to be very good. All right, so I'm going to once again quiet the video and go ahead and heat set this. Okay, so there we have our piece. Looks like I've got a little bit of a smudge there. Let's see if I can get that off. There we go. All right, so there we have our piece. Now we're ready to put this the component pieces together here. We have our card base here, and we have our pieces. So this is ready to be mounted on here. You can see there's actually quite a bit more of the copper on this one than there is on this one. And it's just the way I realized now that I had just inked up my Versamark pad. And that's why it came down so heavily on this one. And that is adhered flat. So I'm just going to adhere that with a little bit of snail. And all of my snails are about empty here. So I'm going to put a little bit of snail on the back of this panel. And set that roughly in the center of that panel. And then I took the 3 pieces here and keyed on this corner. So I put this piece in that corner and set it up with what looked like a pleasing kind of arrangement. And then I did the same thing with this one, set it off to the side, even though it's smaller, to just get it in that same configuration. And that way, when I lay it down here, it covers a big part of the front of this panel. So the trick here is to get this adhered to each other in a way that makes some sense. There we go. And then I'm going to take all 3 of these pieces and add some dimensionals to the back here and raise up this piece. Okay. And then I want my sentiment to basically be sort of centered and square, and that allows the pieces then to fan out across the front of the card. And I just realized I did that before I stuck on my ribbon or my twine. You know, there's always something in one of my videos that I didn't do quite the way I intended to. I'm going to see if I can pull this off. So the objective here with the twine was to get a bow kind of up in this corner. And I think I'm going to come more across the card on this one than I did on the other. Like I could actually set a dimensional here just for the purposes of anchoring the ribbon, and maybe that's the smart thing to do. If I want that ribbon to go right across there, then I can use those 2 dimensionals to secure that piece of twine. Now I want to leave, if I want to tie my bow on this end, then I need to leave quite a long piece on this end so I have enough room to tie my bow. But now I can anchor this twine across those 2 dimensionals and get it to go right across where I'd like it to go. And I wound it around 2 or 3 times, and I think that was very pleasing to my eye. So I'm going to say 3 times and come across here. There, I think I like the way that looks. And then cut a significant length on the other side so I can make sure I have plenty of space to tie my bow. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is secure a knot here right on the edge of the card, this piece. There we go. And then you can arrange this piece any way you'd like for going across the card. But I think that looks pretty good. All right, then what I did was I used some of this copper thread that we have, and I went around my hand several times here to get enough of it so that we'd really see it, because it's awfully thin thread, and kind of gathered it in the middle and turned and twisted and pulled edges so that it wouldn't be too perfect, and then cut off the end. And then I used a glue dot to put in place right here, kind of folded over on itself. Let's see, where's my silicone mat? Right in here along where I have all of this twine, and then use that glue dot to put down this copper ribbon or string, and then I came back over the top of this and tied my bow across the copper thread to also help secure it in place. And so let's see. And while I start it right on the edge, it ends up moving back over towards the front of the card, which is just fine. And I like the idea of having all of that there, and then just cutting the twine so that it just kind of trails down a little bit on the card here, on the card front. Okay, so there we have our piece, and now I can try putting this back on my card and squaring up the message. And now I've got those 2 additional glue dots, dimensionals down there to help this be configured right for the card. So there we go. Now I've got that down on my card base, and you know, really and truly, it is a simple little card, and I think very, very attractive. And like I said, not overly feminine. I think this could easily go to a guy, and they would be feeling like they got something that wasn't too feminine. So let me get my pieces for the inside. Okay, here's my pieces for the inside. And what I did was I ended up with a couple of very long pieces of this card, of these strips of paper that were left as I was trimming things down. And so I thought on the inside of the card, on this one, I just did something that was just a little bit different. And so I'm going to need my trimmer to make this piece roughly the same size as that. Looks to be about 1/4 of an inch. And so I'm going to shorten it a little bit first, and then see if I can trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch. Always challenging on a little tiny strip on your trimmer. What I have found is that if you put your blade in the middle of the paper and then really hold down this top piece, you can often get your piece cut the way you want to. And that one moved on me a bit, so I'll probably have to finish that off with a pair of scissors, but that's fine. I mean, it's just a small little nip on the end. So there we have a couple of pieces to work with. And I thought it was interesting to do the pattern back and forth, just because it's a little different. So the first thing I'm going to do is to use some snail and put this piece of Very Vanilla down on the inside on my piece of Cajun Craze here, and get that set into place. And then what I did was I trimmed each of these pieces so they went a little bit past the center, and I cut off the ends, and then this one has a diagonal that goes this way, so I just made a little point on the end of this paper. Then using my silicone mat, I put a little bit of snail down on it and put it at the top of the paper, coming down the side. And then I did the same thing with this piece, trimming it off to roughly the same length, and then using this other end here to make the little point, and put some snail on that, and then have it coming from the bottom of the card and butting up against this piece here, and just adding a little different kind of decoration for the inside. I'm always about something that's a little different or a little unusual. All right, so now I'm going to use my snail again on this piece and put it into place on the inside of my card. And I'm going to keep going on this series. I've had a lot of fun with this, just doing the unexpected with some of our wonderful designer series paper. And you can get some really unusual looks and get something that's very attractive without a tremendous amount of work. So there we have a lovely card where we've enhanced our designer series paper with a little embossing powder. See, this string here ended up not being pulled tight enough across here, so I'm much happier with this look. But that is our project for the day. So another fast and beautiful, and I think it works both for anybody really. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do appreciate it. I will be back soon with more projects and more cards. The prize draw for the month is 4 sets of the Stampin Blends Alcohol Markers, plus the Ivory, the Bronze, and the Color Lifter. So a total of 11 markers, 2 each in 4 different colors of your choice. And and I'll have some videos up soon with using the alcohol markers to show people a little bit of some of the techniques to use them, because if you haven't used them before, there's definitely some tips and tricks to make them have your projects be more successful. So again, that's it for me. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll be back soon. Bye.